The following is a chat I had with Sarah Sawyer just after she completed the London Marathon last year. She's a highly experienced runner, does everything from marathons to ultra marathons to multi-day events. She's got tons of experience. It was a great chat, packed full of advice. So please just have a listen and enjoy. Hi, Rupert Bonington from Mountain Fuel Sports Nutrition. We've got one of the most effective and innovative sports nutrition systems on the market for beginners to elites. And today I'm talking to Sarah Sawyer. She's runs pretty every kind of terrain, every kind of distance. Recent races she's done like the Spartathlon, GUCR, the Centurion Track 100. She's just done London Marathon, and she's training currently for the Keys 100, which is in Florida in the US. So, how are you doing, Sarah?
Really nice to see you, Rupert.
Oh, good. Now, just out of interest, how many years have you been running?
Do you know what? I had to think about that. I started in September 2009. I've just come back from traveling around Southeast Asia for 6 months. So it will be 15 years in September, wow, which makes me feel like an old woman.
And can you remember, because this kind of episode is kind of specifically about marathons. Can you remember when you did your first marathon?
So I started September 2009, and then I ran my first marathon April 2011. So about 18 months afterwards, I ran Brighton Marathon. Yeah.
Right, cool. And then can you remember the time that you did it in?
Yeah, I did 4 hours, 29 minutes, and I was over the moon with that at the time.
Yeah. No, that's great for a first marathon. Yeah. That's absolutely.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I just wanted to finish. You've just got no idea what's going to happen. Yeah. And then it just started a slippery slope, really, into more marathons, longer stuff, you name it.
And can you remember, were you aware of sports nutrition? Did you do anything, take anything for your first marathon?
You know what? I was thinking back on it and I was completely clueless. I had no idea what I was doing. We didn't even know any other runners at that time. My husband had just started running at a similar time, but, we didn't have anyone to speak to or anything. We'd probably pick up a little bit from running magazines and stuff like that. But yeah, really had no idea. So I don't recall any specific fueling. I remember taking those awful shot block things, the ones that you just have to chew and chew and chew. Yeah. I remember taking those in some kind of jelly bean sports nutrition, but that was it. There was no science behind it or anything. So I was probably massively under fueling all the time.
And can you remember, like, your general diet back then what kind of things did you kind of eat?
Do you know what? My diet really hasn't changed that much over the years. I've been vegetarian since I was 16, but apart from that, I will eat anything. I love food. I believe everything is fine in moderation, so I don't deprive myself of anything, really. I'm probably a bit more conscious, especially as you get older. I'm always making sure I am getting enough carbs, and I'm especially making sure I get enough protein in, especially after exercise. So I'm probably a bit more scientific and knowledgeable than I was then, but I don't think my day-to-day diet has actually changed that much.
Right, okay. And then, so this last weekend, you just completed London Marathon. So how did it go?
Oh, I had an absolute blast. As you just mentioned, I'm doing the Keys 100 in Florida, which was 4 weeks after London, so 3 weeks coming up. So I haven't done any specific marathon training for it, but my coach knows that I love London Marathon, so it was fine for me to just run it, just enjoy the day. And yeah, I just had an absolute wonderful time. I think I just wanted to run happy and run strong, and I felt like I ran the whole 26 miles like that. Yeah, I think there's just something about London that just you can't help but smile when you run it.
Yeah, I've been down there when the marathon's been on, but I've never done it, and
it's probably not your bag, is it?
Well, yeah, I do. Do you know what? I was chatting on a podcast the other day about this. I actually would have quite liked to have done like a proper road marathon, and I just never have. But I think I just enjoy running. And actually running quite fast is quite good fun. So not that I'd necessarily run that fast in a marathon, but do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we talked about in your kind of first marathon, you didn't really know what you were doing, how you were doing it. You kind of I imagine kind of shop blocks, things like that, were the kind of only things to hand that people were talking about, had to use those, and obviously the experience wasn't great. So what is different to what you do now to then?
Oh, I'm so much more clued up. I mean, I've been using mountain fuel. I was trying to work out how many years. I think it's been since like 2016, 2017, so years and years. And I just know what works for me now. So I literally take a mountain fuel jelly every 30 minutes throughout. I start off at the 20 grams of carbs ones, and then I build up, and then I will take the 30 grams of carb ones in the later stages. And I just do that like clockwork. I have a alarm going off on my watch every 30 minutes in case I do forget. I never do tend to forget. And yeah, that just worked like a dream for me.
Brilliant. So which of those then, do you have any particular flavors that you enjoy, or?
Do you know what? I love all the flavors. Yeah, I mean, I can take them for hours and hours and hours on end, and I never get any taste fatigue with them. I like the variety, but I also like that they're very subtle in taste. I don't want to be eating kind of sports nutrition that tastes too much like heavy proper food. You know, there's a time and a place for that, but not when I'm running.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I get that. And then, so what about in the build up? So, like in the week, but you say your diet hasn't really changed, but is there anything you do differently in the kind of week build up to a race?
Yeah, I mean, I guess again, this just comes with years of experience. So yeah, I'm really quite strict at what I have kind of the day before a race. So I race abroad quite a bit. So if I race abroad, it's always a margarita pizza. Wherever you are in the world, you can get a margarita pizza, can't you? So I always get a margarita pizza, and I love a couple of alcohol-free beers the night before race. If I'm at home, then it's obviously much easier. Me and my husband, we have something what we call a race tea the night before race. I'm allowed to say tea because I'm northern, so dinner is at midday and tea is at 5 o'clock. A race tea in the Sawyer household is a big jacket potato, a big vegetarian sausage roll, and baked beans. So it's really plain, carb heavy and food, and that just always works. So I always just try and keep things quite plain the day before.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, and using things that wherever you are, whether you're abroad or in this country.
Yeah.
Is actually a good idea. And that's saying, you can get them, no get hold of you know like him, know the work for you.
And it's just kind of, it works. So why change something that that has worked for so many races over so many different distances and different terrains and different climates? So yeah, that's it, either abroad or at home, I'll race too.
Yeah. And then what about breakfast?
Yeah. So again, it very much depends whether I'm racing at home or abroad. So if I'm abroad, I swear by one of your morning fuels. So I'll always have that, because again, you're a bit limited what you can have, and often a race will be started before, you can get anything in the hotel or something. So always start with the morning fuel, and then I'll just take one of your mountain fuel bars. If it's a longer race, then I will probably try and get some kind of plain sandwich that I'll eat for breakfast. Yeah. At home, again, it's very simple, and probably the morning fuel, the bar, and sometimes a bit of toast. Yeah. So again, it's just really, really simple and plain, and what I know works for me. Yeah. And then one thing I always do, and this is something that I've kind of started doing over the years, I will always have one of the energy fuel drinks to just sip on in the hour or two before the race. So with something like London, we live in Brighton, so it's, an hour and a half kind of, with the trains up there. So I was just sipping on that on the journey up. So I just know that my glycogen levels are kind of, ready to go at the start of the race. And I find that really works for me as well. So I kind of have probably got these kind of superstitions and traditions.
Yeah, I'm similar. And I think you're absolutely 100% right. It actually doesn't matter what distance to do. Even if I do a park run, I will have an energy fuel in advance, because I just want to know that I can absolutely run as fast as I can, and I'm as topped up as I can. And and it kind of helps see through. And as much as anything, it actually helps with the recovery, because if you actually up, you actually recover better. So you can't
100%
run after your park run or whatever.
So that's what kind of pre-race morning looked like for London this year.
And then what about recovery? Like, what do you do anything in particular for kind of race day training recovery and race day recovery?
So I mean, I eat before every run. I eat on every run that's over 90 minutes. So I'll be, as soon as I get to 90 minutes, maximum, I'll always start taking the mountain fuel jellies, and I eat something after every run. Sometimes it's more likely to be a protein shake in that first hour after run. You might come back and you're busy, or especially after a race. So my husband met me at the finish. I had one of the mountain fuel recovery shakes, drank that. And then, if I'm being honest, my post-race recovery slipped a bit then, because I went to the pub and had a couple of pints. But it is London Marathon.
Not wrong with a couple of celebratory drinks.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm such recovery shakes after every run, and especially after race. I just think you're replacing everything just so simply, so quickly, you know, without having to worry about getting special foods down you or anything.
And which flavour do you prefer out of interest?
Do you know what? It depends where I am, what kind of day it is. So if I'm somewhere hot, I much prefer the strawberry. But then any other times I prefer the chocolate because it tastes like good old chocolate milk, doesn't it?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I love the chocolate. I've got
Yeah.
to say, I do love the chocolate. And then mine, instead of the pub, I often will have a chocolate recovery, and then probably about 3 or 4 cups of tea. I just after like being out for hours and hours, coming back, recovery, tea.
And it's always got to be Yorkshire tea.
Yorkshire tea, aye.
Yeah, always Yorkshire tea.
Yeah, no, that's good. So, what advice do you think you would give to kind of like, if you could kind of give advice to beginners starting out on their kind of marathon journeys or whatever, what advice do you think you would give to them?
I would say find out what works for you. There is so much misinformation, bad information. You know, you've got people telling you on one hand, you know, you should be doing, you know, runs fasted. You've got people on the other hand telling you should be taking 100 plus grams of carbs an hour. They're both the extremes. I think most people work well on between 50 and 90 grams of carbs, but even within that, it's not, one size doesn't fit all. So it's finding out what works for you. You know, I think women especially, we tend to be on the lower end, you know, so we can probably get back with 50, 60. Men, you know, they're probably 80, 90. So I'd say find out what works for you. And then even when you've found out what works for you, and I have found out what works for me, you know that it is going to change for different races. So, you know, what I will take in a race in the UK is probably going to be very different to what I'll take in Florida in 3-4 weeks, you know, because of the hotter climates and everything. So find out what works for you, but be prepared to adapt it to the conditions on the day.
Yeah. And do you find, like, say, for the marathon as an example, are you quite good at pacing it? Are you somebody like Callum, who I spoke to the other day? He went off a bit too hard, and that kind of he still ended up with the PB, so he's delighted, but it meant that he forgot to have one of his jellies. It meant that his last kind of 3-4 miles were an absolute sufferfest.
No,
he still managed to, you know, achieve his goal and stuff, but it was a painful experience. How are you with your kind of pacing when it comes to racing?
I guess London this year was a bit different because it was more kind of, you know, just a fun, hard training run. But yeah, I'm known as a bit of a pacing queen. My pacing is kind of quite like metronome. I guess I know it's going to hurt, so I want to stop it hurting as long as possible. So yeah, so I'm probably quite a conservative pacer.
Cool. Oh, well, I take my hat off to you, because I'm definitely somebody who's been known to kind of go off a bit too hard. And then you look at your watch and you think, I'm not a 5-minute mile.
Yeah.
What am I doing?
Yeah, the wheels are going to fall off at some point. So yeah, I just try and I know it's going to hurt, but I know if you pace yourself, then the hurt is going to last the least amount of possible.
Yeah, that's a good strategy.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to finish
Easy
off
said
with.
than done, though.
Yeah, I'm going to finish off with, in theory, quickfire questions. I'm not very good at quickfire answers, so I'll forgive you if you're not overly quick on them. So,
okay, I'll try not to waffle too much.
So the first one is your favourite product and why.
I've probably alluded it to already, but definitely the jellies. I can take those all day and all night, and I have done. So things like you mentioned Spartathlon, Grand Union Canal Race, you know, I was out for, you know, getting on 30 hours for those. And I took a Mountain Fuel jelly every 30 minutes for those 30 hours. And, you know, there was no nausea, there was no taste fatigue, you know, my energy levels were high all the time. So yeah, I just swear by Mountain Fuel jellies.
Fantastic. And then the next one is, and it'd be difficult for you because you kind of run all sorts of different distances, is what's your favourite distance and why?
we've talked about marathons a lot, and I do love a marathon because I just think if you're racing it, there's nowhere to hide with it. I also think, a big city marathon, they just bring out the best in people, like London. I did Brighton a couple of weeks ago, exactly the same. I guess my favourite distance is a fast runnable 100 miler. And the reason why I like a fast runnable one is so you end up in your own bed that night.
Oh, that sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of getting into my own bed, not having to run through the night. So yeah, that's my ideal distance.
Yeah. That pain night. Yeah, no, I agree with you.
Yeah, I'm not very good with sleep deprivation. I'd never want to do kind of, one of these massive long races. I'd get to the end of the first night and think, do you know what, I've had enough. I want to get to bed.
and then I'm always intrigued, people who have had either the raw energy fuel or the natural jellies, they're kind of unflavored.
Yes.
I'm always intrigued as to what flavor other people describe them as, because everybody kind of says, oh no, it's a hint of this or a hint of that. So what would you describe, either the raw energy or the natural jellies, or both?
Just call them really subtle flavors. I wouldn't say they taste of anything in particular, but they've just got this really, really nice subtle aftertaste, which is, as I've said before, I don't like things that taste too real foody. So that's why they're perfect for me.
Yeah, perfect. And then if you could go back, which is the one thing that you would say to yourself when you first started out running?
I'd say always make sure that you're enjoying the journey more than the actual destination. So I think sometimes we're probably all guilty of this in our younger running days. You become so fixated on the results, and then you actually realise, it's the training and the process which is just way, way, way more important and enjoyable than the actual race.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right there. I don't know if you've kind of found with your kind of friends and peers and stuff, but some people, they kind of have really good training blocks, and then they get so wound up about the race itself, they don't enjoy the race.
Yeah.
And they kind of feel let down because they maybe haven't quite performed, but that's probably because they've just been so emotive and so emotional about it.
Yeah.
It's kind of impacted on the whole experience.
Yeah. And I always just think, the race is almost a celebration at the end of a really, really good training block. If you think how many hours and hours you spend training for a race, even the longest races, you might be out for 20 hours or something, that's still a tiny fraction of the amount that you've spent training for, isn't it? So that's why I think to enjoy the training is way, way, way more important.
Yeah, brilliant. And then the final one is, what's your superpower?
I would say always being able to smile when I'm racing. It hides a multitude of pain. It makes other people feel like that you're really enjoying yourself, and it does make you feel so much better. I always get people saying, how can you still be smiling at mile 90? And sometimes it is kind of like, if I'm smiling, I'm going to be making myself feel better, and it does work. I think it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you start to feel negative, then you will end up feeling negative. So yes, smiling.
Oh, that's brilliant advice. Yeah, no, I think that's right. To be honest with you, I think that's quite a good thing just in general life.
Yeah.
I think I'm
probably pretty much the same day-to-day life as well, actually.
Yeah. The amount of times that, if I've kind of said to my kids or whatever, if you're going to go into an environment you're unsure about, you're going to go and speak to somebody you've never spoken to before and you're unsure, stand outside and smile first, then go in, and it just totally changes the way that you kind of come across and speak, doesn't it?
Completely, yeah. So smile, that's my secret advice.
Brilliant. Well, I think that's fantastic, and thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it.
And, thank you for asking me. Really, really nice to catch up.
Oh, lovely. And good luck in Florida. Hope it goes well.
Thank you very, very much. Yeah, I've got kind of a rucksack full of mountain fuel jellies and energy fuel, so yeah.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Right, well, we'll see you later.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Cheers, Sarah.